Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, That Model Railway Guy. Welcome to another review video, and this is one I've been wanting to do for a while. It's the Accurascale Class 31. Now before we get started, please don't forget to give the video a quick like just to appease the YouTube algorithm, and also if this is your first time visiting the channel and you like what you see here, don't forget to click that subscribe button too. Believe me, it really helps out. So yeah, very excited to finally be looking at the Class 31. I have had to postpone this review slightly for reasons we'll get into later, but Accurascale really are on a roll at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see if this model lives up to expectations. Just a quick note, in the past Accurascale have sent me stuff for free, for example the Suburban coaches that I looked at a couple of weeks ago. That's not the case here. I did pay for this loco myself, but since I do have that existing relationship with Accurascale, I did just want to mention that so you don't think I'm hiding anything. With that said though, let's take a look at the specs for this model. So this is the Accurascale Class 31, looking fantastic here in the BR blue livery. Announced back in February of 2022, this first batch arrived in October 2024, with a second batch due to arrive fairly soon. The model features a 21-pin DCC socket, and mine is actually a sound-fitted version as well, which includes two speakers, the standard-fitted Sugar Cube speaker, and then also the larger Acura Thrash speaker, which is included for the sound versions. In addition to that, we also get a working fan, stay-alive capacitors, and a wheel flange sensor, which I'm really looking forward to testing out later on. The price for these models comes in at £169.99 for the standard DCC ready versions, with these sound-fitted examples costing £269.99, so £100 more there for the sound versions. Honestly, that doesn't seem too bad considering the level of detail and the extra features you're getting with this model. What's interesting is that Bachmann with their own Class 31 do seem to have set the price for their model at around the same place, which is slightly cheaper than some of their other diesels, so possibly a reaction there to Accurascale's pricing. Of course, it's not a straight comparison because things like the working fans you do only get on Bachmann's Deluxe model, which also features the new uncoupling system as well, and that costs around £290 at the retailers. Meanwhile, the working fan is available on all of the Accurascale 31s, so from a features versus price point comparison, it's really going to come down to what each individual modeler values to figure out which brand is best for you. However, this isn't a comparison video today, I just did want to mention that there is another model on the market and how the costs stacked up against it. But now let's focus our attention on the Accurascale model and see if it lives up to all of the hype. Firstly, the weight of this model is really nice, and being a large diesel, it's got plenty of space inside for a solid chunk of metal. But yeah, nice and heavy, and that's going to be important for something else we'll get to later on. The livery is fantastic too, with the BR blue replicated really nicely. Obviously the most noticeable feature is the double arrow logo on the side here, and the printing of course is nice and sharp. This goes for all the printing across the model, by the way. For example, up by the cab, we have the loco's number 31432 on the side there, and of course the information panel just below it too, which is absolutely tiny. There's also some additional printing on the door there too, and also I do just want to highlight the wire grab handles and the door handle itself, which are both picked out in silver. There's also lots of other little additional printed details around the model too, for example the warning flashes up by the roof. Then the final thing to mention is the orange cantrail that runs down the side too. The only thing that stands out here is that the printing does seem to be more solid in different areas. I'm not sure if this was something that would have happened in reality, but in some areas you can see the difference with how intense the colour is, just as it passes over different areas of the moulded detail. It's a minor thing admittedly, but something worth mentioning. Obviously, it's not all about printed detail though, as we've got some rivets and panel detail down the side of the Class 31, not to mention the various grills and the windows too. These are both modelled really nicely, and the windows do seem to have a little bit of interior detail behind them too, which is nice. Looking at the underframe, you can see we've got plenty of detail here, especially around the bogies and also on what I think are the fuel tanks in the middle there as well. There's not much that has been highlighted or picked out in this area, but that does seem to be the case with the prototype too, at least at this point in their lives. Moving round to the front of the Class 31 though, you can see we've got plenty of detail here, as well as lots of functional LEDs too. There's the two on top for the dominoes where the head code box would have originally been. Then below this are the two red tail lights which can be switched individually, as well as the white headlamp in the centre there too. And don't worry, I'll be demonstrating all the features a little bit later on when we get this loco on the layout. Of course, it's not all about lighting here. I do want to highlight some of the detail around the windows too, which is very nice, especially those windscreen wipers, which are incredibly fine. And you can't really see it here, but we do have a full interior modelled inside the cab too, which of course has its own LED. And of course, as you would expect, we do have sprung buffers on this model too. Pretty much a standard now, so it would have been a little bit odd if Accurascale hadn't included these. There are some electrical cables around this area too. I believe this is the ETH connector, which is a very fine, delicate piece. So delicate, in fact, that my model arrived missing the one at the other end, although part of it was rattling around in the box. You know, not ideal, but these are delicate models and occasionally things do happen. The good thing is that I contacted Accurascale and they did send out a replacement piece to fit. I haven't done this yet though, just because the locating holes have got dry glue and I think the lugs of the original bit are still stuck in there, so I guess I'm going to have to drill those out at some point, which could be a bit fiddly. But yeah, not a major problem, but I do feel like I have to mention that, especially as I'm sure someone in the comments would have noticed if I didn't. Moving up to the top of the Class 31 though, we've got plenty of detail here too. Decorated in that same BR blue colour, there's lots of panels and fine wire handrails here to look at, but the standout feature of course is the fan, which is functional. Unlike the Bachmann model where you have to pay for the deluxe version to get this feature, Accurascale include a working fan on all of their models. And considering it's painted in red here, you really can't miss it. Also, just mentioning that the grille above the fan is nice and fine too, so that's great to see as well. Another thing I do like about Accurascale models is the fact that it's so easy to access the DCC decoder. The access hatch is held down using magnets, and this can easily be removed to reveal the PCB underneath. Inside you can see we have the decoder, which in this case is a pre-fitted sound one, and then we also have some switches so that analog users can still set up things like the lights in the way they want to. And of course, to replace the access hatch, you just push it back into place, letting the magnets do all the work. Unless you want to fit a crew to the cab, you really should have no reason to remove the body. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me though. This Class 31 model has two speakers inside, a standard Sugar Cube speaker which comes with every model, and then the sound-fitted versions also have a larger Accurathrash speaker included too. Unfortunately, on my model, that larger speaker wasn't working. I did get in touch with the Accurascale support team, who in fairness got back to me really quickly and said they'd send out a working speaker, along with that replacement for the broken pipe I showed earlier too. It did take a while to arrive though, because they didn't have any spares at the time. For reference, I contacted them about it at the end of October, and I received the replacements at the start of December, so just over a month. As far as replacing it goes, it was a little bit fiddly, and the new speaker wasn't exactly the same. The actual speaker itself is identical, but you can see on the old one here, which I've since removed, there are some holes to fix this in place with screws at the end there. The new speaker didn't have those screw holes, so I think I just had to use some black tack to hold it in place instead, and thankfully the new speaker does all work. But yeah, not an ideal situation, but it is a good opportunity, I think, to point out that Accurascale do have a lifetime warranty for their models, and as far as I know, they're the only model manufacturer to have this as an official policy. Like I said, they got back to me really quickly, and I get the feeling that if I'd have had any other issues, they would have been able to have provided further assistance too. But yeah, that is a general look over all of the detail on the Class 31. A couple of little issues which I can't ignore, but do bear in mind that this is just the case with my model, and it certainly doesn't seem to be representative of the entire batch. We know that the model looks good though, but how does it run? Well, let's get it on the rolling road and find out. So I have the Class 31 on my rolling road set up, and we can get it moving. Yeah, nice slow speed on this loco, and really consistent too. It's a little bit hard to see on a diesel like this, I'll admit, but on the close-up here, hopefully you can see a bit better. Now, you will notice that not all of the wheels are turning here, just the two outer ones. That's the same for both bogies, and there has been some talk online from some people about this model not being all-wheel drive. For those that don't know, the Prototype 31s actually have an A1A, A1A drive configuration, which basically means that on the real-life loco, it's only the outer wheels that have tractive power. So what Accurascale have done here is actually more accurate, given that that is part of their name. I can appreciate that not everyone has that knowledge, and I also understand why some people are disappointed that this isn't all-wheel drive. But honestly, I really don't think that this is a problem, and I'm going to show you why exactly that is a little bit later on when we get to running this loco on the layout. But overall, you can see the Class 31 is a really great runner in both directions. Nice and smooth, great slow speed for shunting or coming up to trains, and at the higher speeds it's really consistent too. So coupled with the detail, the Class 31 is looking like another winner for Accurascale. With this first running test done though, let's get it over to the layout and test out all of the sound and lighting features. So you can hear the Class 31 going through its startup sequence there, and with those two speakers inside the model, this has got a really decent sound to it. I'll just quickly run through all the lighting features. You can see the various functions listed on the screen, but essentially the key thing to note is that we have individual control over all of these lights, so you can have whatever combination you like. This is equally true for the red tail lights too, where you can have both of them lit, just one of them, or none at all if you're coupled to a train. And not forgetting, we also have an LED in each cab too. And a really fantastic detail is that there's even a function to light up the control dials too, which is absolutely incredible. So those are the lighting functions. Now I'll shut up while I run through some of the sounds. So the Class 31 seems to be very happy on Pitley, and today I've got some of the Accurascale Mark II coaches to run this with. There's a couple of things I haven't mentioned yet though, one being that the Class 31s come with a Stay Alive pre-fitted. Obviously it's only active on DCC, but it's great to have this pre-fitted, and let's give it a quick test here. Yeah, a decent amount of extra power there, certainly enough to get you over the odd dirty section of track, especially with all the pickups this model has as well. And before we send the loco off around the layout, there's just time to take a look at the working fan as well, which you can see spinning away nicely there. Something else I haven't mentioned is that the Class 31 has a sensor on the wheels, so when it goes around a curve, it automatically triggers the flange squeal sound. That isn't me playing the function, the model is doing this on its own, which is another really nice feature. Although I should say you can turn this off, for example, if you only want it to happen in a yard. Now earlier on I talked about how this model doesn't have all-wheel drive to be more accurate, and I just want to show why I really don't think this is a problem, so I have a quick demonstration to show why that is. If I let this coach go here, you can see it rolls down the length of the layout because there's actually a slight incline. Not by much, it's just because the floor isn't entirely level, but it does cause the locos to work a little bit harder than they usually do. So with the Class 31 back in the station, I'm going to set it off from a standing start, this time heading uphill. You'll notice as the train goes past that I've added a bit more rolling stock to the rear just to give this a real test. And when I say a bit more rolling stock, I basically mean everything I had on the layout at the time. So look, I can see why some people might be surprised that this loco isn't all-wheel drive, but it certainly doesn't impact the performance of the model, and it seems a bit of a non-issue, especially when this has obviously been done to make it more accurate to the prototype. Most people aren't going to have layouts that can accommodate this length of train anyway. Even on my medium-sized layout here, this is pretty ridiculous. So yeah, this seems like a lot of fuss over nothing, to be honest. Overall though, I think it's clear to see that Accurascale have another winner on their hands here with the Class 31. Yes, I've had a couple of minor issues with mine, but as I always say, it's not really fair to judge an entire range of products based on one reviewer's experience. In any case though, I'm certainly very happy with my model, and it seems like the Class 31 has been popular throughout the hobby, once again showing that Accurascale really do know what they're doing. This is a high quality, high performance and highly detailed model, and if you're looking for a top-notch diesel to add to your collection, the Accurascale Class 31 is definitely an option worth serious consideration. That's it for today's review video though. I do hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also let me know down in the comments what you think of this Class 31 too. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!